What's the word, peoples? It's your boy John back at you with another reaction video. Today, I'm gonna say this, man. I recently just watched the Resident Evil series on Netflix. And I'm gonna just say this, man. I've always been a Resident Evil fan when I was playing video games heavy. I never played, I think I stopped at like 6. I never played the other Resident Evils. But I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube saying how the Resident Evil that was on Netflix was terrible. But how can you say that if you can't compare? I mean, can you compare the movies to this one? Even the new movie that came out was garbage. Garbage. The old movies, garbage. They ain't follow the game or nothing. Unless you want to talk about like the zombies or the dogs or monsters they had and everything like that. It didn't follow the story. Resident Evil on Netflix followed the story towards the future, and it was going back to when they had rebuilt Raccoon City. So I kind of took a liking to that. You know what I mean? The whole situation, I liked it. And they brought up certain things that happened. The only thing that was weird to me is when they talked about Wesker. That's the only thing that was weird to me. Everything else was cool. I liked it. But this is a movie critic, a cruel, unfunny joke. And this dude really be breaking down movies to the T. So we're going to go ahead and see what his video about on Resident Evil, the Netflix series. Let's go.
Oh my god!
It's awful!
Damn, man, it's almost impressive at this point just how terrible the Resident Evil screen adaptations are capable of being. Like, every time I think they've hit creative bedrock, they somehow find a way to keep digging and reach even greater depths of shittiness. I mean, the Mila Jovovich movies were basically a gradual descent into insanity in their own right. It's like the filmmakers themselves couldn't quite believe that their movies were popular enough to justify sequels, to the point that each one basically ended up undoing the events of its predecessor so that it could go off in a completely different direction, and by the end, the cast and crew had fully transitioned into no fucks given territory. But holy shit, they were absolute masterpieces compared to Welcome to Raccoon City, a disastrous attempt to reboot the franchise by meshing together the plots of the first 2 games into a ridiculous mess of a story that nobody wanted. The script was idiotic, the acting was more wooden than an old-timey sailing ship, the action scenes made Book of Boba Fett look like Terminator 2, and the whole thing felt like it was done on a budget of about $500. In short, it was a garbage movie with a garbage script and a garbage production. And honestly, it seemed like Resident Evil had finally hit rock bottom. But there was worse to come, dear viewer. A lot worse.
It wasn't bad, man. It wasn't bad.
Whoa! What is it?
Compared to those movies.
What? Oh! Oh no!
When a Resident Evil TV series was announced on Netflix, enthusiasm wasn't exactly at fever pitch. After all, Resident Evil fans had been burned more times than Star Wars and Star Trek fans combined. But apathy soon turned to confusion when the first promo pictures and casting announcements came out, and we were treated to the baffling sight of Lance Reddick.
Yeah, I ain't understand these two right here though. Like, that's one thing, one up you got on me right quick, because that's not Wesker at all. They made Wesker look like Blade or something. Like, what was that?
Albert Wesker, not to mention a primary cast composed almost entirely of women. Was this really going to be another ridiculous race-swapped intersectional feminist disaster drenched in heavy doses of the message? Or was it all just a big misunderstanding and Resident Evil was destined to be the best video game adaptation of all time?
Chris? Stop it.
No, Resident Evil is terrible. Not
crazy.
terrible as in it's a guilty pleasure like the Mila Jovovich movies. Not terrible in a clumsy, low-budget, well, they tried their best kind of way like Welcome to Raccoon City. No, this show is so bad that I genuinely don't even understand the thought process behind it. It's like Dawn of the Dead if Dawn of the Dead was made by the CW. A show that swings wildly between angsty teenage melodrama and post-apocalyptic survival story with absolutely no rhyme or reason. I'm gonna do my best to summarize this absolute nonsense, but don't expect any kind of detailed plot breakdown, because to be honest with you, the less I have to talk about this shit, the better. Anyway, the narrative of Resident Evil takes place in 2 different time periods, split between the events leading up to a zombie outbreak in the present day, and the struggle to stay alive in a post-apocalyptic world 14 years later. If I had to pick the one strand that's marginally less shit than the other, I'd say the post-apocalyptic future segments probably win out, on the basis that at least some things actually happen in them. This is a world that's been devastated by a T-virus pandemic, reducing the world's population to a few 100 million holed up in fortified cities run by Umbrella, which seems to have become the de facto world government now. But there's still a few people working to make things better, including Jade, a strong, empowered female character who spends her days studying the zombies in the hopes of finding a cure someday. But along the way, she runs into Umbrella strike teams, hostile survivors, mutated animals, and estranged family members now working for the enemy. It's a bit like playing Chris's campaign on Resident Evil 6, if Chris's campaign had been directed by Tommy Wiseau. But then every so often the narrative will jump back to the present day, focusing on teenage Jade, along with her sister Billy and their father Albert Wesker. Because apparently this is what Albert Wesker looks like now.
Wesker, you're pitiful.
And also, this is what twin sisters apparently look like. The world doesn't make any sense to me anymore. Anyway, the Weskers have just moved.
I'm not gonna lie. The whole time when I was watching this, I was trying to figure out was they friends or anything like that. And to come out, they were sisters. Twin sisters at that. It was like, man, come on, man. How did that pull off? But they said they was cloned up and it still ain't make sense. Like, come on.
New Raccoon City, a creepily neat corporate town in the middle of nowhere, run by everyone's favourite purveyors of insanely impractical viral weaponry. The girls are pretty different in terms of their personalities. Jade's outgoing and sociable and makes friends easily, while Billy's shy and awkward, and vegan, because of course she's fucking vegan. It's almost like they set out to make a character as unlikable and preachy as possible. Anyway, when she spots some animals being shipped into Umbrella headquarters, she begins to suspect that the company is up to no goods. Really? You think? So she does the sensible thing and sneaks back in there with Jade one night, because apparently 2 teenage girls can easily sneak into the high security headquarters of a major pharmaceutical company with no problems whatsoever. But oh no, they accidentally release a zombie dog and Billy gets bitten, and then Albert shows up to save the day and sends the girls home so that he can cover the whole thing up. Because I guess security men, night watchmen, and any kind of live video feeds are just not
That was a good one though. See, that's why I don't like watching stuff like this, because he pointing out the obvious though. Because I was saying the same thing though, like all the security that Umbrella had, where was the security at that time? It was none. None. I mean, I know buildings that don't got nothing really going on. They got 24-hour security. Like, why you don't have no armed security right now? That's ridiculous, man.
In this world. So anyway, the main focus of the present day stuff is the tension over whether or not Billy is going to turn into a zombie, the girls' growing suspicion that their dad isn't everything he seems to be, and their efforts to gradually uncover what exactly Umbrella is hiding. And this is where Resident Evil mutates from a boring, uninspired zombie show into a living nightmare that genuinely had me wishing for a real-life zombie apocalypse so that it could bring my suffering to an end. I mean, call me crazy, but I'm willing to bet that out of all the things that could possibly appeal to fans of the games, the angst and tedious social hang-ups of 2 asshole teenage girls have got to be pretty far down that list. Honestly, who the hell was this show even supposed to appeal to? The kind of people who actually find teenage dramas interesting are going to check out the moment the zombies show up, and the people who just want zombies and action and guns are going to be bored out of their minds by all the teenage angsty stuff. Instead of complementing each other to produce a full and complete story, the split narratives end up competing and cancelling each other out. It doesn't exactly help that neither character has anything even resembling likability. Billy is whiny, boring and pathetic for most of the early segments, while Jade is arrogant, patronising and aggressive. So basically, like every female character written these days, She consistently manipulates and uses others for her own benefit, expecting them to put themselves in danger without ever considering the repercussions. She takes ridiculous risks and consistently ignores warnings from people more knowledgeable than herself, and she's even an asshole towards her own father, openly disobeying and insulting him. Why exactly is this idiot the protagonist again?
I can't figure it out at all.
Both girls are insanely stupid and irresponsible. Like, at one point, Billy's been infected with the T-virus and potentially only has a couple of hours left before turning into a mutated, flesh-eating zombie. So instead of going to a hospital or safely isolating her in a secure place in case the worst happens, the two girls instead do the sensible thing and go to a house party with hundreds of innocent people in attendance.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
Yeah, fucking genius. Their motivations flip on a
dude,
dime
yeah,
as
man.
well. In the first few episodes, Billy is the one who suspects Umbrella of wrongdoing and pushes Jade to help her get to the truth. But then, like 2 episodes later, she's perfectly happy to sit back and assume that everything's A-okay, while Jade becomes the one that's pushing for answers. Why? Don't know. Another time, after running into a conspiracy theorist who cast doubt on their parentage, they realise that their dad has never actually told them a single thing about his family, his childhood, or even where he was born, and they just never really thought to ask him about it until this precise moment. What the fuck? You're seriously telling me that you've never once asked your dad a single question about his life before you were born?
That's
I mean, if you've
crazy.
lived with someone for years or even decades without really knowing a thing about them,
This dude,
that should
hold
be a...
up. This dude really breaking this down. There was definitely some questions though, but the overall story, it was good. They just should have, dye their ass and cross their T's before they put it out. But it was good, man.
Very
It was
obvious
good.
red
Don't
flag
listen
that
to
they're
him.
probably hiding things from you. Oh, and in case you didn't pick it up from the trailers, Resident Evil takes place in a magical fantasy world where about 90% of all military, scientific, executive leadership and general positions of authority are held by women, because that's totally how things work in the real world. The male characters generally fall into one of 2 camps, either comically stupid and ineffective morons whose only real job is to get killed, or passive, effeminate beta males that are perfectly happy to be treated like
that's
shit, never stand
crazy.
up for themselves, and generally act like they're sorry for even existing. Honest to God, when is this Hollywood trend of open disdain and hatred for men and masculinity going to do the world a
I
favor
didn't
and
even
just
think about that
fucking
part right
die?
there.
The cast is made up mostly of talentless nobodies who sleepwalk their way through their scenes, rattling off their atrocious dialogue with all the enthusiasm and commitment of a fat positivity activist at a CrossFit tournament. Watching Evelyn Marcus interacting with her wife is almost physically painful. It adds absolutely
Almost
nothing to
forgot
the
all about
story
that
and
part.
seems to exist for no other reason than so the writers can make it very clear that she's married to a woman. Wow, groundbreaking stuff in 2022. The only person here with actual talent and ability is Lance Reddick, and goddamn, I feel so sorry for this dude. He might have been horribly miscast as Albert Wesker, but I hope he at least got a decent paycheck because he's way better than this show deserves. They've even
Yeah, no
gotten...
question. That is a good actor though, man. I don't know why he accepted that role, but at the end of the day, they gotta pay him good for this one because I liked the movie. Personally, I liked it. I mean, the series. I personally liked it over the season 2, but yeah, he wasn't Albert Wesker, man. That was crazy how they did that to him. He look like he look like Blade right there, man. Like, come on, man.
Stop like fucking Blade. Also, I'm genuinely still trying to make up my mind which is worse.
You look like
The fact that the
Blade.
show basically ignores everything to do with the Resident Evil video games, their characters and events, or the half-arsed dumb as fuck attempts it makes to
Oh,
reference
man.
them. Remember the Moonlight Sonata? Remember Lisa Trevor? Remember Lickers? Remember the Tyrant? Like in episode 5, when Dumb and Dumber have to decipher a torturous series of clues left by their father so that they can access a bug-out bag with money, passports and weapons inside. Like, how the fuck is this supposed to be helpful? The whole point of this ridiculous plan is to warn the girls of impending danger so that they can leave with vital supplies at a moment's notice. Solving riddles and methodically overcoming complex problems is just fine when you're poking around some creaky old mansion with all the time in the world, but not in a fast-paced, high-pressure situation situation like this. It's a
That's
perfect
true.
example of the complete lack of thought, logic, or common sense that permeates every single inch of this absolute turd.
I see what they were trying to do though. They were trying to put the game inside the movie. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as the puzzles with the piano and yeah, that's all they were trying to do. Trying to put the game inside the movie. That's all they were trying to do.
Nothing in this show makes sense. Every character acts, talks, and makes decisions with all the savvy and intellect of a 10-year-old with learning difficulties. The pacing is utterly nonsensical. The dialogue sounds like it was written by someone that's never heard actual humans conversing with each other, and it's all crowbarred in with half-assed callbacks and references to the games that I'm willing to bet nobody involved in this shit show actually bothered to play. It's the absolute arrogance of writers and showrunners who wanted to tell their story, push their messages, work with their characters,
Yeah.
because what they want is so
I
much
feel
more
you on that
important
one.
than what the paying customer wants. Why bother to
I
do
feel
a
you.
faithful adaptation of the games when you can just tell a completely different story, slap the Resident Evil name on it, and call it a day? Honestly though, if I'm in the business of pointing fingers, then I'm gonna blame Capcom for this shit show. After all, they're the ones that have
Pause. Yeah. Out of all the movies and everything that had to do with Resident Evil, why Capcom ain't never stepped in and put their own 2 cents up into the situation as far as movies though? That's a good question. Because it would never be nothing like this. From the beginning of the first Resident Evil movie, it would be none of this. You know, it would have stuck to the script. It's Capcom's fault.
sign off on this, and they did. I mean, seriously, have you guys never even heard of quality control? Do you not realize that every embarrassing failure like this does nothing more than degrade the Resident Evil brands? I mean, how could you have read this script and thought, yeah, this will turn out great, can't see why our fans wouldn't enjoy this one? Resident Evil on Netflix is without doubt the worst possible Resident Evil experience that I've ever had. Even the Mila Jovovich movies at their worst had some element of campy fun that you could appreciate. Even Welcome to Raccoon City had vaguely recognizable characters and locations, but this was nothing but 8 hours of absolute, abject misery. It's something that I never want to see, talk about, or think about ever again, and it's pretty much the final nail in the coffin of the idea that we'll ever get a decent Resident Evil screen adaptation. Hope you're proud of yourselves, you absolute dicks.
It's like in this video. But alright, look. My whole thing is this. Like, the last part when they were just showing the mansion exploding, right? Or sinking or whatever the case may be. That's when the missile strike was coming. So, I'm sure you, whoever's watching this already saw that. They was going right after that scene, though. In Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil movie, it wasn't none of that. So, of course, like, I feel like they was following the script on that part, you know. Oh, this is new Raccoon City. Raccoon City got blew up by a nuke. The government blew up Raccoon City. That sounds more knowledgeable to start off with than how the original movie started off. But at the end of the day, I like the movie, and on another note, Capcom should have stepped in as far as making these movies though, or the series, whatever the case may be. Capcom should have stepped in, because it could have been a whole blockbuster hit, because it's millions of Resident Evil fans out here. It makes me want to go get a game right now, because I don't own a game system, but it makes me want to go get a game system right now and start playing from Resident Evil 7. I played 6. Yeah, I played 6, 7, 8, and it's supposed to be a 9 coming out. Yeah. And people going crazy over them games right now today. So why not fix the movies up? Is my whole thing. But yeah, cruel, unfunny joke, man. I'm gonna go ahead and subscribe to this dude, man. Make sure y'all subscribe to him too. But if you want me to do any more videos like this, make sure you put a comment in the description below. Make sure you like and subscribe. And I'm gonna do more videos like this. You know, if you want me to watch a movie, I'm gonna watch it And I'm gonna go straight to his channel and see if he had watched the same movie and break it down though. Because me personally, I like Resident Evil. But I'm gonna holler at y'all later, man. Peace.